Immersion is often hailed as the holy grail of language learning, and for good reason. Immersion-based learning is more fun and effective than using textbooks. It's far cheaper and more convenient than going to language classes, and it better mimics how we learned our first language as a child. Now, there are some important differences between first language acquisition and second language acquisition as an adult, but a lot of the same principles apply. But as any experienced language learner will tell you, immersion is not a magic bullet. Getting lots of language exposure is essential, yes, but it's not sufficient on its own. You can't simply surround yourself by the language and automatically soak it up like a sponge. If you want to get fluent as quickly and efficiently as possible, there are a few holes you first need to patch in your immersion boat, and a few extra steps you need to take to better absorb and be able to actually use the new words and structures that you're hearing and seeing. Step 1, overcome input overload. Immersion provides a flood of language input, which is crucial for learning. This exposure helps you acquire accurate pronunciation, native-like intonation, and natural phrasing. It also shows you how words are used in context and provides the raw data that your brain needs to make sense of underlying patterns and to develop an intuitive understanding of grammar. However, this deluge of information can quickly become overwhelming if it's not properly constrained. Without the right approach, all of this input will simply be a flood of incomprehensible noise that your adult brain will ignore. In other words, to succeed in immersion-based language learning, you need to do the following two things. You need to constrain the quantity of input to avoid overwhelm and increase its quality by making the content more comprehensible. Here are several ways to do just that. 1, create a study plan. Decide what topics you want to focus on for the next 3 to 6 months. Then decide how many hours a day you're going to commit to language learning. See the linked video for more on creating more time for immersion. This creates structure, reduces overwhelm, increases focus, and provides a bit of useful gamification in your language learning journey. 2, use narrow reading and listening. Try to read and listen to a few different pieces of content about the same basic topic. This provides a useful filter, constrains vocabulary, and provides some repetition without boredom. 3, use a dictionary, but only sparingly. After you read a page or finish a section of audio or video, take a moment to look up a few new words in a good dictionary, but limit yourself to just a few lest you interrupt your flow, get overwhelmed, and then quit. 4, use interactive subtitles. When watching videos on Netflix or YouTube, turn on the Language Reactor extension for Chrome to add a pop-up dictionary, 3-way subtitles, and lots of additional study tools like the ability to export new words and study them in Anki. 5, read plot summaries. Before reading a book or watching a show or movie, read a brief summary on Wikipedia or IMDb to create a clear context and more easily follow the narrative. Step 2, mix in active speaking and writing practice. Immersion alone leads to passive learning and only strengthens your listening and your reading skills. You will absorb lots of new words and structures, but you probably won't be able to actually use them in speaking and writing. In other words, you are practicing comprehension, not production. Speaking and writing, on the other hand, are active skills that require tons of direct practice. If you want to learn to speak, you've got to speak. So make sure to supplement your input, that is your listening and your reading content, with plenty of output, that is speaking and writing. You can meet with an online tutor on a site like italki. You can participate in free language exchanges on a site like Tandem or using the app HelloTalk. You can chat with AI-powered tools like ChatGPT and Teacher AI. You can keep a daily journal in your target language, or you can write to an overseas pen pal. Such active production of the language reinforces what you've learned passively. It also helps you spot holes in your active vocabulary and grammar. It provides useful feedback on your usage. And most importantly, it reminds you of why you're learning the language in the first place. And step 3, build a cultural context. Language is deeply intertwined with culture. Your task in language learning is not just to memorize a bunch of words, but also to develop a deeper, intuitive understanding of the culture in which those words are used. You also need to develop the ability to intuit social cues and subtle messages that are communicated between the words. While immersion provides useful exposure to cultural conventions and nuances, especially when watching TV shows or movies, these can be easy to miss and hard to master without enough cultural background and first-hand practice communicating with native speakers. Here are some effective ways to study the culture alongside the target language. 1, interact with native speakers in real time. Use tutoring and exchanges, whether online or in person. Attend local language and culture meetups. Visit local restaurants with staff that speak speak the language. And perhaps most important, spend time abroad. 2, learn about the country's history. Watch documentaries, read books, and fall down Wikipedia rabbit holes, ideally in the target language, so you get a little bit of extra exposure and practice reading about the history too. 3, learn the names of important people and events. As you dive into the country's history, learn some of the key individuals and incidents that most native speakers will reference on a regular basis. For example, politicians, celebrities, inventors, authors, dates of independence, major wars, etc. 4, learn about social norms and customs. Familiarize yourself with eating etiquette, such as do's and don'ts with chopsticks. There are a lot in Japan and China. Holiday traditions, such as traditional Lunar New Year, religious practices and traditions, and what kind of clothing is appropriate to wear to a church, mosque, synagogue, temple, shrine, etc. And of course, societal taboos and social gaffes that you are best to avoid if possible. The bottom line is this: immersion is one of the single most powerful tools you have in your language learning toolbox, but you shouldn't rely on it alone. Language immersion and language study are not mutually exclusive, but rather complementary activities that reinforce one another. Immersion without study is meaningless noise. Study without immersion is a boring slog. So to ensure a deeper understanding of your target language and the people who speak it, immersion should be augmented by structured study, active practice, and cultural context. As in all things, the key is balance. Get enough immersion to keep things interesting and enough study to keep things comprehensible. For more tips on how to build an effective immersion environment with plenty of active practice mixed in, download my free Quick Start Immersion Guide over at anywhereimmersion.com. Link in the description below. All right, happy diving.